Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Scares That Shaped Us, a podcast about horror writers and the stories that made them. I'm your host, Matthew Jackson. We have got a great show for you this week. Bob Pastorella is our guest. You will know him as one half of the This Is Horror podcast. You will also know him as the author of the new vampire novel, The Small Hours, out now from Ghoulish Books. It's a lot of fun. We're going to talk to Bob about writing The Small Hours. And we're going to talk about what I think is probably an underseen, underrated vampire classic from the early 1990s. Project over at Pop Heist. I am recapping Brian Fuller's amazing series Hannibal, which was my favorite TV show in the world in the years that it was on. And that has been so rewarding to dig deep into why that show works so well and why I love it so much. If you're listening to this the day it goes up, there are now 2 recaps up, episode 1, episode 2, over on popheist.com. And they are currently for subscribers only. So if you want to read them, you should go buy a Pop Heist membership. Pop Heist is a worker-owned, writer-owned outlet that is not dictated by algorithms. We write what we care about. We do amazing, cool work, and you can get all of it for just $7 a month. And I think that's a pretty good deal. And I'm not just saying that because I work there. So if you want to read me writing about Hannibal, Brett White writing about G.I. Joe, the great Sean T. Collins writing about I, Claudius, which is amazing stuff, all of that stuff is in the members only section of Pop Heist and much, much more. And we're going to be adding more as the weeks and months go on. So yeah, please support Pop Heist. We're doing a lot of cool stuff over there. But that is enough of me. Let's head over to our interview with Mr. Bob Pastorella. Joining us this week on The Scares That Shaped Us is one of our friends, a fellow Texan, one half of the amazing This Is Horror podcast crew. You have read his fiction in places like the Lost Films anthology and They're Watching, co-written with Michael David Wilson. His debut solo novel, The Small Hours, is available right now from Ghoulish Books. Bob Pastorella, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matthew, thank you so much for having me. I've definitely looking forward to our chat and getting to talk about one of my favorite movies ever made.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun talking about that wild ride. But first, I want to talk about The Small Hours. Like I said, it's out right now from Ghoulish Books. Everybody can go pick it up. It is a vampire novel, but one of the things that really fascinated and thrilled me reading it is this thing, for quite a few pages, just reads like a really fun crime story about a couple of kids trying to play amateur detective. And then it kind of morphs and gets weirder and weirder and darker. So for those who don't know, could you just give our listeners a little taste of what The Small Hours is?
Well, The Small Hours is about a group of young adults who have lost one of their friends, and it hasn't even been a month, and no one knows how she was murdered or who killed her, and the police are out of leads, and so the main character, he does yard work. He's in between jobs. He's in his neighbor's shed and sees a shirt, a an item that he is confident belongs to their friend. He already had weird feelings about his neighbor. The guy's like a Russian mob, has the Russian mob tattoos. People show up, they never leave. Obviously, the kid watches his neighbor too much, but he basically talks his friends into breaking into his shed to get some evidence and nail this guy and get some closure. And they have should have never done that. They open a doorway into a den of horrors, of bloodthirsty vampiric horrors, and that
Yeah,
is the small hours. Yeah,
it's so much fun in that kind of classic. I mean, you mentioned that they're neighbors, so there's a lot of Fright Night in here. There's a lot of I know that when I spoke with you about it at Ghoulish Book Festival, I think you mentioned Suicide Kings as kind of an influence on it.
mm-hmm.
And I love how much of it is just devoted to these friends. Jay, Winnie, is it Winnie or Willie?
Willie,
Willie.
Willie,
And their friends Quentin and oh gosh, I'm blanking on the final character's name.
Artie,
Artie, Quentin and Artie. Just kind of throwing caution to the wind and going like, let's just see. He's not home. Let's see what's in this shed. And it gets so wild from there, but I love how lived in the bits with those four friends feel. Where did the book start for you? Did you start with this vampire concept and work backwards? Did you start with her name's Lucindy, the girl who goes missing? Did you start with Lucindy's shirt in the shed? How did it kick off?
Well, I mean, it kicked off. I had the initial idea of what I wanted to do, and I wanted to basically kind of have like a murder mystery. I wanted to start off as a murder mystery, and everything. I wanted it to be grounded because I knew I was going to be going to some wild and crazy places with the vampires. And so I needed this story to be grounded. And so I needed my characters to all play against each other. And that's how, when you have a group of friends, that people who ultimately care about each other, there's always some animosity between a couple of them. But when at the end of the day, they all, root for one another. It's one for all, all for none. Right. So, these friends, I mean, to me, it just felt really, really natural that they would just play off of each other. And I also knew that I had to basically eliminate any like why they couldn't do this. So I had to cover all of my bases. And I probably left some bases out, but I had to cover all of my bases. And so I created, Willie, who is Jay's girlfriend, and she is the voice of reason. She is the one who basically tries to talk him out of doing this, but who ultimately says, "Hey, yeah, we're going to do it because there's no way that I think you saw something. Let's find out what it is, but let's do this in a way to where we don't get caught." And so I had to ground it in that, but it pretty much started with kind of like a backwards concept of I'm not really spoiling anything by saying this, but it is a what if on Dracula. And
Yeah, yeah.
and some readers have caught on to it. It stands on its own without knowing that, but if you catch it, it's mostly in name only.
Yeah.
But it's what if Dracula was caught on the Demeter? What would they do with him? And then I just worked backwards from there because the Russians had the ship. And what if it was set today in Texas? And so every character is basically a character from Dracula. And it's, like I said, it'll stand on its own without it. I could easily go in and change all the names, and I have the feeling that the story would stand on its own. The name recognition is for people who like especially Dracula fanatics will go, oh well, this is something that's a little bit deeper. So there is some name connections there.
This is extremely funny to me because I sat there and clocked why the neighbor has the name that he has, but it did not click for me until just this moment that there's a J, and
Jonathan.
for Jonathan, Willie, Wilhelmina, Mina,
Mhm.
Quentin, and
Quincy.
Quincy, and Arthur Homewood.
Yes. Yes.
I love Dracula, and I spend so much time thinking about riffs on Dracula stories, but that was the part that I didn't like. You have the neighbor's name is Mr. Fields, and I'm like, okay, I know where that connection is, but I did not get that your four main characters are the vampire hunters until right this minute. So good
Yeah.
job. Good
Yeah.
job.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Even Lucindy, who I used
Lucy, yeah.
yeah, Lucy. I used to party with a girl named Lucindy, so that's not like a name I made up. It's just it's like I always thought that was just a really cool and pretty name.
I'll tell you what, I know, I've met you, so like I know that you're from Texas, and we've talked about both being from Texas together. And I knew this book was set in Texas, but when I read the name Lucindy, I was like, I know exactly the kind of Texas that Bob is writing about here. That's very much y'all seen Lucindy? Yeah, that's very much a Texas thing. Um, why was it important for you, speaking of that, to set it in Texas? Because you really could have gone a lot of different places with, like you said, like what if Dracula got caught crossing on the Demeter? Like you could have taken it anywhere. Why did you want to set it like here in our home state?
Well, mainly because of a previous novella that I wrote called Mojo Rising, which is set in Grigsby, Texas,
Mm,
and I'm slowly building Grigsby, Texas, into a place where a lot of weird stuff happens, and so it is a combination of a bunch of cities and towns near me that technically there's no way the city could exist. I mean, there's a beach where there's no beach,
yeah.
so I mean, it's just one of those. Uh, I guess I played around with the geography, and I make it loose and fluid, and so it that adds to the strangeness. So if you tried to map it out, it'd be like, "Hey, this city's actually 100 miles long," and it's like, well, "No, it's not," but it's not even real. But yeah, it's just so it just felt natural to go back to it. There is a little nod to Mojo Rising in
Mm,
there, like one little sentence. Uh, but and it's or one little part because the main police officer that nobody wants to deal with is a one of the side villains in Mojo Rising. So
mm.
the it's just I like having that sense of place, and it was already there. It's like why not use it?
Yeah. I mean, it's very fun as someone who's from Texas and who like I write a lot of fiction that's set in Texas and my own invented little places in Texas. So it was just really cool to dig into your vision of what Texas is and your vision of what vampires are. And this is something that I enjoy talking to guests about because we've had several people who've written vampire books on the show, and I love talking about how you figure out your version of the vampire, how the rules work, what they can and can't do. What how did you go about doing that and coming up with the Bob Pastorella vampire?
Well, the one of the things that I did was I read a lot of European vampire folklore.
Mm,
And so and then some purists would probably frown on it, but I read a lot of Montague Summers. and primarily the vampire, his kith and kin. I think the folklore of the vampires, another one. I'm missing a title, but basically these are just like accounts, like one after the other, after the other, after the other, of what Europeans experience with vampires, and it's a lot. There's a lot of similarities, especially in Dracula. But this book is even though it deals with the character Dracula, I think it kind of almost it kind of deals a little bit, goes into Carmilla a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And so with my vampires, one of the things that I did is I reversed engineered how to destroy a vampire, because that would give me how I could revive a vampire. And that is a plot point in the story. I'm not going to spoil it, but that is a plot point. Is like, and so primarily, like, to give you an example, driving a stake through the vampire's heart is not the sole purpose of doing that. You're not trying to pierce the heart, and they didn't even have to use a stake. The idea is that you were trying to pierce them to the ground, to where they could not get off the ground. And so it's typically the way you would dispatch a vampire would be to take a long metal rod, and pierce it to the ground to where it could not get up. And then if you really, really wanted to be sure, you could take its head and stuff its mouth with garlic, and turn the head around to where it faces the other direction. And if you really wanted to be sure, you could just cut off the head and remove the heart. And that would ensure that the vampire, as long as those, three pieces, the head, the heart, and the body, stayed apart, the vampire could not be revived. And I love that concept. It's like, it's so, it's just gnarly that people would do this. And they have found, remains of that they've done this to people, and it's like, wow, they actually believe that these people were vampires, And when it comes to me and the supernatural, I love writing about it, but I don't believe in that shit at all. It's like it's not. It's like, okay, if there are vampires, then they're very well organized and they're super secret. They're like, I don't know, Antifa. I don't know. It's like, I don't know. It's I don't think they exist,
Yeah.
So, or if they do, then they exist everywhere. And yes, I know we've all met some actual living vampires in our lives.
Yes.
The people that just suck the soul out of a room. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to also ask about This Is Horror, which you and fellow friend of the show, Michael David Wilson, have been doing together for quite a while at this point. When Michael was here, we talked about the podcast, not just as an interview series, but as a vehicle to sort of enrich your own creativity along the way by talking to these other creative people. It's something that I do here every week. It's something that I think a lot of us who do this kind of podcasting are into. I'm curious what your perspective is on what This Is Horror and talking to so many authors for so long has given you as a writer.
It's given me an opportunity to speak with people that I never dreamed in my wildest dreams that I would ever have a conversation with. Like the weeks leading up to the time before we had Kathy Koja on the show, I was just so excited, because if you would have told me when I first discovered her work, like 20 years before that one day you will have a conversation with her, I would be like, you're crazy. I'm never talking to this woman. And to have her be on the show and be so warm and gracious with her time, and just everything that you expected and hoped it to be, they say you should meet your heroes. I loved chatting with her. to me, it brings an immense sense of joy. A lot of times I find myself just listening to the guest because I'm learning, I'm taking notes, I'm trying to use what they've used for me to become a better writer. And I think that's real important. Um, I love that Michael has these questions, these open-ended questions that take us into all kinds of territory. And that's Michael's job. He's the question guy. Me, I'm the comment guy. I can have a way to kind of draw some other things out, draw some other things to it, to the forefront. And but a lot of times I find myself just listening, and I think that's the whole thing, is that we're there for the guest, and we want our listeners to learn and to be entertained. And me and Michael are also learning and being entertained at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's just freaking awesome.
It is incredible, the front row seat that you get. It's an incredible thing because at you are at the same time getting a front row seat to what is often like a writing masterclass from someone who's been doing it for decades and has all of this wisdom to share. And at the same time, they are people like you and I who just want to have a nice conversation, who are have their own flaws and vulnerabilities and concerns, and you get this moment of, it's I mean, like you said, it's amazing. There are horror authors whose work I've admired for years who treat me like a peer now because we've had these conversations on the show, and it's a remarkable that in and of itself is encouraging as someone who writes fiction, to be able to go like, oh, I'm just like this person, like we're friends, I can just go talk to them about anything. That helps me understand, like, this is not some like lofty, unbelievable, impossible thing to do, writing fiction. It's work, and it's fun to talk to other people who want to put the work in. But we were talking about vampires. We're going to talk about vampires a lot more, everybody, because this is going back all the way to Ghoulish Book Fest 2025, which was 7 months ago now, when Bob and I met in person for the first time. We were talking about vampire movies, and Bob said, "You know, it's a great vampire movie. Let's Scare Jessica to Death." And I said, "Hell yes, it is." So we are talking about Let's Scare Jessica to Death, the 1971 independent horror film directed by John D. Hancock. I first saw this movie maybe like 5 years ago. I was doing a thing for Mental Floss about the best vampire movies ever made. And so I was kind of going around and filling in all the gaps of things I hadn't seen. And I watched this movie, and it was just immediately so strange and gripping. And I had a blast revisiting it. Bob, what do you remember about your first encounter with Let's Scare Jessica to Death?
My first encounter with Let's Scare Jessica to Death was probably when it had its encore presentation on network television. So they probably cut a little bit out of the movie, but they showed it after the evening news, and so they probably on a local channel. They showed it on a Friday night. And I was probably, at that time, I was born in 1967. So I was probably 5 or 6. I was way too young to watch this movie. I was way too young. It scarred me. I remember my dad, I guess my dad had heard about it. And we decided to watch the movie with me, my mom, and my little sister. And I think my mom ended up going to bed. And I think my little sister had just been born. She was maybe 1 or 2 years old. So she was just basically just, chilling out, being a little kid. But as soon as the movie started, my dad, we turned out all the lights and everything like that. Mom made popcorn. This is like one of my earliest memories. And right as the movie started, right before Jessica goes and does her first, gravestone rubbing, it's like the music's playing, and my dad did that, famous yeah, and it made everybody jump. And I'm pretty sure that's when Mom said, "I'm going to bed if you're going to continue to do that." So we watched this movie, and it, even though I was probably way too young to understand a lot of it, a lot of it sunk in. Uh, and probably the thing that really kind of sunk in to me, because I'd already been exposed to some vampires in comic books and things like that, and all I knew is they were creatures who drank blood. I didn't know that they were dead. I didn't know that. I just knew that they were like monsters that drink blood, and we had seen that, in the comic books and all of that. With what's it, Marvel Comics, Tomb of Dracula.
Tomb of Dracula, yeah.
Yeah, I was already reading those, and Morbius, and mainly just looking at the pictures, like the lurid artwork, And so I probably didn't even understand that vampires were undead. That was probably a little bit later as I got a little bit more sophisticated. I probably said, "Oh, they're not even alive. Wow." So, but I got this entire concept of ambiguity at a very young age. And I'm like, because I remember talking to my dad afterwards saying, "Hey, maybe this was all like just one of her bad dreams." And he goes, "Who knows? It could have been." I liked the fact that there's no fangs in this movie.
Yeah.
So it is not your traditional vampire. It leans more to the Carmilla aspect of it than it does to the Dracula aspect of it.
Yeah.
And it was years later when I read Carmilla, and I was like, "Oh, they definitely got the ideas for this from Carmilla, because Carmilla is just fantastic. If you've never read it, you should read it."
Yeah, it's funny how many films from around this time were pulling from Carmilla. It was like in the air again for whatever reason. You have this, and Hammer did, I don't know how many sort of lesbian vampire films with Ingrid Pitt and others that played off the concepts in Carmilla, but there was something in the air. But one thing I really like about this film is how, and by the way, for everybody, we do this every time we talk about a horror movie, but we will spoil Let's Scare Jessica to Death.
Yeah.
It's 54 years old this year, so you've had time. If you haven't seen it, pause the podcast, watch the movie, come back. I love and I had sort of forgotten the kind of culture clash aspect of this movie. This idea that these are sort of maybe slightly hippie-ish city folk coming out into the country in New England to fix up an old farmhouse and live the simple life. And there's just immediate hostility from the townspeople. They're just like, "Why are you here? What do you want? What's going on?" And they're just like, "No, we're going to fix up this farmhouse." But the movie opens, you mentioned the grave rubbing, but the movie opens with basically a promise to the viewer that you will not necessarily be able to trust everything you see, because it starts with Jessica sitting in that rowboat going, "I don't know what's real anymore."
Mm-hmm.
And you're left to ponder that as it heads into what starts as a pretty typical horror movie setup. These people driving out into the country. Jessica stops at a cemetery to take some rubbings of some old gravestones. They meet the townies. The townies don't really like them, but then they go to this farmhouse, and it's just like, "Hey, we're gonna have a fresh start. We're gonna live this life out here, and it's gonna be great. And you're gonna feel better," because that's the other thing. Jessica has a history of mental illness. We're never entirely given the full story of what she's gone through, but we know that she went through doctors and institutions and things like that, and they're trying to give her a fresh start. And then this other woman just sort of shows up on their doorstep. Well, no, not she doesn't even show up on their doorstep. They show up on her doorstep because she's already in the house. This woman named Emily who's like, "Oh, sorry, I was just kind of crashing here." And they're like, "No, stay for dinner, stay for dinner." And it just gets increasingly strange from there. And I love that it starts with that little promise to the viewer of like your main character is not to be trusted. We do not know exactly what is happening for real and what she is imagining. I can't imagine being like a 6-year-old boy watching a movie like that because that would have blown my mind in ways that I'm not sure I could have handled.
There was a lot of things that were going on in my real life that kind of made the beginning of that film, especially when they go to the farmhouse and they get scared by Emily because she's already in the house and don't realize it. But then they invite her to stay, and there were some things that were going on in my parents' life that felt very familiar with that. My dad was a professional dog handler. He showed German shepherds, and so we always had people at the house who were in the dog in the American Kennel Club business. They were always coming to check out the dogs. They were, you know, he bred dogs, and so there was a lot of people over in and out of the house all the time. Also, my dad was one of those people that he got into different things, and he wanted to get into. He got into CB radio. CB radio became very popular, and so it wasn't uncommon, though now would be extremely strange, to wake up at midnight on a school night and go into the kitchen, and there would be strange people in the house that Dad met over the CB radio, sitting around smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee. And so seeing this woman and how they took her in, what might seem very strange to people today, that was kind of how people were back then.
Yeah.
They wanted everyone. It was when it talks about, people say, well, peace, love, and hippies, they really were peace, love, and hippies, you know. And this is before, our national paranoia obsessions began, but it was just a calmer, nicer time. And it was free love, and I think that's probably some of the stuff that they probably edited out of the movie. When I saw it again, which was on VHS years later, when we finally the local video store, the guy loved horror, and he had that movie, and he was trying to turn me. He was, you ever seen this movie called Let's Scare Jessica to Death? And I'm like, you have it on VHS. You have the video. Can I rent it? And so yeah, and then I got to watch it again, and then I got to see it unedited, and I was like, okay, this is a little bit more scenes of violence. And what I mean by that is the scarring,
Yeah.
which becomes more prominent as you go on into the story. And on the TV version, they only show like maybe 2 or 3 instances of it. And so like the scene at the end with her husband, he has the scar on his neck. I don't remember seeing that in the original when the first time I saw it. I think they cut it out, or they edited to where it was, because they do show like a pretty significant close up of it. I don't remember that, but I remember seeing it on the VHS. So it's just weird how network television will edited for content and time lapse, so whatever.
Yeah. It's funny, like you mentioned all of this, and the stuff that your dad was into that kind of changed. Like it's very, first of all, like my mother-in-law breeds and shows Australian shepherds, and has for years. And so I have just met random dog show people. There's so many random encounters with people in the dog show world and the dog breeding world. And she is much more kind of like accepting of all types of people because there's some weirdos who do that stuff, and you run into some people and you're just like, man, you have your own little planet over there that you're operating on. So I definitely recognize that, and I remember from because I grew up in deep rural central Texas. We lived out in the country, and I remember my grandparents were the kind of people who would just sort of have a conversation with anyone, and people would come over to the house, and you would just sort of sit and talk and visit. Visit is the word that the Texas grandparents used.
We got company over.
We got company.
Over. Yeah, and you don't answer the phone.
Yeah,
and when what's in the fridge is getting cooked.
Yes.
I mean, it's that simple.
Exactly. And it is something that I think we people, casual horror fans will talk all the time about, horror characters in horror films making stupid decisions. And what you have to understand is with a film like this, and I compare it to something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and those kids realizing that they found a house. There's a house right off the road. Maybe they have gas. Let's go see. And people go, why would you do that? That's so stupid. And what you have to understand is that it was not an odd thing for these people in the context of these stories at all to go, oh, there's a house over there. Let's just see if they've got gas. Oh, this woman was crashing at our house. She seems nice. Let's let her stay over for dinner. I also love that it's three people. It's Jessica, her husband Duncan, and their friend Woody, who is very much just kind of a hippie dude hanging around. And one of the reasons that Emily gets to stay is that Jessica senses that Woody maybe has a crush on Emily. So she's like, Emily seems nice. Woody deserves to hook up with a nice girl. Let's just let Emily hang around and see if something happens between these two. And it feels very organic and natural, and it helps to set up Jessica's arc because Jessica, when we meet her, is so optimistic. She is looking forward to this life. She's looking forward to being able to decorate this farmhouse and find grow food and do all of these simple things that are going to be restorative and happy for her. And when she meets Emily, she's just immediately like, you get to be a part of all of this now. And what she doesn't know, you mentioned the scars. When they go to town, Jessica notices that it's a bunch of older men hanging around town. You don't really see young people. You don't really see women. It's a bunch of old men just hanging around, and they all have bandages on somewhere on their bodies, like whether it's on their arm or on their neck or on their face. They all have a bandage somewhere. And she's like, did you notice that they're all bandaged? And her husband is quickly like, don't worry about that. I'm sure there's a reason. Just let's go. And the second act of the film is very much an exercise in breaking down Jessica, all of that optimism and joy that Jessica had, because she starts seeing things. There's a lake by the farmhouse. She thinks she sees something in the lake. She thinks something in the lake grabs her. And of course, because she has this mental illness history, Duncan and Woody are immediately like, hey, calm down. We've been down this road before. I'm sure it's nothing. It's a lake. Stuff lives in it. It's probably just a fish. Don't freak out. Please don't. And I love that dynamic because it sets up this fascinating thing for her where she is terrified and convinced that something is about to happen that they don't see coming. But she is equally terrified that if she says the wrong thing, Duncan will immediately go, okay, this was a bad idea. We're going back to the city and you're going to see your doctor. I love how tense it all is because of that. And Hancock shoots it. This movie was made for $250,000. This is a low budget horror film, even by 1971 standards. And it all feels like something out of a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels like a bad dream this woman is having.
That's to me, that's like the beauty of the storytelling there is because you have a character who's literally between a rock and a hard place. It's like she's scared out of her mind for everything coming at her. It's like, hey, okay, so either this is like really happening, or I'm going crazy, and I don't want to tell them I'm going crazy again because I'm going to end up back in the hospital, and that's the last place I want to be. The thing that I love, and it took me a long time to realize this is, but and speaking of like Carmela and things like that, this movie follows a lot of the old European vampire folklore. Is that the vampires? People think nowadays vampires are just going around killing randos, right? Okay, no, vampires fed on communities,
Yes.
and they would usually take a familiar or someone who was not going to be, you know, fed on, and convince them to help them. Okay, because they needed help, because these are basically rotting corpses who have kind of like a some type of spiritual uh attributes that basically will feed on an entire community repeatedly. Not until they're dead. It's like they've got a food source now because they
Mhm.
need the blood. And so they start off with their loved ones because that's the ones who's going to trust them the most and are going to be so excited that they're back from the dead. It's like, no, what we know now is like if my dead grandmother suddenly showed up, I'd be like, I need something to hack her apart and put her back in the grave because she ain't supposed to be here. She's dead, you know. So be like, hey, grandma, good to see you. Love you so much. Hate the fact I'm about to cut off your head, but I mean, you don't want to be, you don't want to experience that stuff. But these people were so overjoyed because they believed in life after death and they believed in these things. And so you have this vampire, the supposed vampires we find out in the story, and it's like, and she's feeding off this community. And it's like, wow, you don't really see that kind of dichotomy in a vampire story. That there's it's like just one community, and and it's like she's got them entranced. And so I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but yeah, it's there's there's a lot. It lends to a lot of the European folklore.
It does, and it also is a reminder of stuff like the New England vampire panic that happened in America in the colonial years, which people can Google. There's lots of video essays and stories about it, but essentially it was a tuberculosis outbreak, but everyone thought that it was vampires, and they would like we were talking about earlier, they would dig up corpses, cut out hearts, cut off heads, do all of that in service of, because it was a community thing, and that was always, obviously, if you have tuberculosis and you're in a house with a bunch of your loved ones and then you die, there is a chance that your loved ones are going to get tuberculosis. But if you think about that from the point of view of a vampire story, like, oh, she died and now all of her relatives are sick. What if she's showing up at night when everyone's sleeping and feeding on her brothers and sisters and mom and dad and whatever? Um, so I love the basis for all of that, and then it really starts to get into the supernatural mystery of it all, because Jessica and Duncan decide that in order to get some cash on hand, some pocket money, they're going to kind of raid the house, and because they bought it as is with all the stuff inside, so they're going to see if there are any valuable antiques that they can sell. And they find a silver picture frame with an old photo in it, among other things. Take it to the local antique dealer, and the antique dealer says, "Oh, oh, that's that family that lived in that house." And the legend has it that the daughter died on the eve of her wedding, and she still haunts the town. And they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, cool story. So how much can we get for the picture frame?" It's real silver. I checked, and he's like, "I love this. I love that there's this just little moment," because he's also a relative newcomer to the town, and he goes, "I'd feel weird about buying something that has to do with this family." that seems wrong. And they do eventually get some money out of him, but it's such a great scene of the townspeople trying to sort of play down like, oh, I probably said too much. Anyway, let's move on with this transaction.
I thought something that was really disturbing too, and I think it's in that scene or within that scene, is that Duncan asked one of the other townspeople when they're going around about if there was a place where you could get something. I can't exactly remember, and the guy said, "If there was, I wouldn't tell you." And I'm
Yes.
like, wow. It's just it's like so subtle that it's not like they don't want him to be there. It's just like there's an animosity there, and it's like they know, you know, and it's just I don't know. You feel like that there's some insider information that Duncan and Jessica are not getting at all. It's just very, very, very unnerving.
It really is, and it reminds me of Texas Chainsaw in the way that that scene early in Texas Chainsaw when they go to the cemetery and there's this old drunk man laying on the grass going, I could tell you things. I could tell you all these things, but nobody listens to me. Nobody wants to hear these stories. And it's not quite that, but these people are very clearly like, you walked into something that you do not understand, and it would be
Mhm.
better for you if you were not here. And yeah, it's just so skin crawly the way that all of that unfolds. And of course, then the antique dealer turns up dead, and Jessica is immediately. Well, I guess we should talk about the blonde girl, the strange mute girl in the town, the only young person who seems to be around these parts, who directs Jessica to this body and then refuses to provide an explanation. And Jessica is freaking out and saying, you know, this guy's dead, this guy's dead. Oh my gosh, that something is happening, something is happening. And of course, when they go to find the body, he's not there. And it's very well done because you can sense Jessica's frustration, obviously, but also Duncan is frustrated. Duncan is like, I thought we were past this. I really
Yeah.
thought this was going to be the clean break that we needed, and we were going to be able to move on with our lives. And he is so frustrated, and it brings up this other theme running through the story, which is it's a bunch of men who don't want to listen to a woman because they think she might be crazy,
Mhm.
which is its own level of scary, and it permeates so many different horror films. The idea that she is so she is so far down this rabbit hole that they're like, you're hysterical, don't worry about it. But then we get Emily starts doing things like Duncan and Jessica get in a fight because of this. Duncan sleeps on the couch. Emily shows up, and of course, she wants to sleep with Duncan. And this is where we start getting into the moments of like, is this Jessica imagining the worst case scenario of what's happening outside of her field of view, or is this a thing that's really happening to Duncan?
Right. It's really hard to tell. It's really hard to tell
It
because the
really
way it's
is.
filmed.
It's because it's again, it's all so sort of dreamlike and strange and impressionistic, and it it's a film that deliberately feels like you're not getting the full picture. Like it almost feels like there was more footage they shot that they ended up cutting because they wanted it to be a 90-minute movie so it would sell better in drive-ins and stuff. And
Mhm.
that may be true, but it gives the final movie this impression of there's information we're not getting, and I don't know if we're supposed to be not getting it or if it was an accident. But either way, it gives you that sense of like, did that just really happen? But the thing that I love about it the most is after all of that ambiguity, and the ambiguity is present throughout the whole movie. It's there beginning to end. You never quite know exactly what's real, but that doesn't stop it from in the final 15 minutes going absolutely berserk at you.
Yes. It is
Yeah.
so it's to me it's like if if they created the ambiguity because they had to leave some scenes on the cutting floor, I really want to say, because this is like Hancock's first feature film,
Yes,
that
yes.
that he I want to say that this was done deliberately because he set up you at the beginning of the movie. You already start to hear whispers, which is basically just Jessica's voice inside her head. But you hear these little, these little whispers, you know, and so what helps also is the sound, is the score, which is very menacing. It's one of the early synth scores.
Yes.
Yeah, and so many people drew inspiration from just the soundtrack. Uh, but you already have this sense that she's in her head, and then they show you a scene that she's really not in. It's like they switch POVs
Mm-hmm.
and they show you something and you still think that she could be imagining this. That's next level shit. I can't say that that's a happy accident. That's like intentional.
Yes.
And for like a first time director who is still directing movies from what I understand, right? I mean, the guy's like freaking old now, but he's still doing this stuff. And I think he had a film like a couple of years ago. I can't remember what it's called, but I think
Yeah.
he's still directing. And it's like this is like the beginning of of a stellar career, storytelling career, and it's just phenomenal what they did. Uh, if this was an accident, it was a happy accident.
Yes, exactly. And that final, uh, I I tend to in fiction, like I don't believe in vampires. Just to be clear, don't believe in vampires in that sort of blood sucking Dracula way. But in fiction, I want to buy the whole farm. I want everything. I'm never going to come away from a horror film that says there are vampires in this horror film going, "Man, wouldn't it be cool if there actually weren't vampires and they just imagine them all?" Like I don't want to imagine them. I want you to throw the vampire stuff at me. And in the final bits of this movie, it absolutely goes for it. He just, which is why I think you're right in thinking that the ambiguity is part of the design, because you get all of these moments building and building and building and building this tension, and then it just lets go. And Jessica is desperate for some help. She believes that her husband is now turned to this other woman. She finds Woody dead outside, which is one of my favorite shots in the movie, because he's not. She doesn't just find him; he's out in the orchard that they have by the farm, driving the pesticide truck, like spraying stuff out into the air. He's driving the tractor and he's got the sprayer on the back of it, and she chases it down and finds that his throat is wide, his throat is torn open, and he's sprawled across the seat, which is amazing. So she discovers that, and she's looking for any help that she can find, and she encounters all of these old men again and sees. And this is one of my favorite bits of like vampire design in the movie, because I've never seen another movie do it like this. It's not puncture wounds, it's not fang marks, it's not even just exclusively stuff that happens on the neck, but they all have these long scars, like they've been voluntarily opening themselves up for this vampire for years. And it's so creepy.
Yes, that's the point that I was trying to get at, because a lot of that early European vampire folklore that I was reading, it had a feeling that the vampire was repeatedly attacking the same people,
Yes.
over and over and over again, doing something to make them think it was a dream or something. If you want to call it glamoring someone, it's something to where they could gain entrance. and it's kind of goes into the myth that the vampire has to be invited in. Why wouldn't you, in that, especially in that day and age, why wouldn't you invite a long lost dead person in your family, loved one, back into your home?
Yes.
Why would you? I mean, it's like, if you think about it, it's like, especially 14th, 15th century, those people would have opened their arms to them because they believed that they come back from the dead. They had, were, most of them Christians. They read the Bible. They knew that Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. They knew that miracles could happen. And that they believed in that wholeheartedly. And they would, so it's like, you got to invite them in. It's like, shit, come on in,
Yeah.
and that's the cool thing about the lore too, especially if you're creative. You take what you want and use what you want and twist it how you want to. And they definitely twisted the vampire thing. And it reminded me years later when I saw The Hunger, I was like, you don't have to have fangs. There's somebody's like, they don't have fangs. I'm like, who needs fangs?
I do really like a vampire movie where they play with the physiology of the vampire and make it a little more ambiguous. And The Hunger is one of my favorite vampire movies ever. Somebody come on the show and pick The Hunger. We got to talk about The Hunger. But going back to Let's Scare Jessica to Death, this is kind of the portion of the show where I like to talk a little more. I like to sort of blend the work of my guest with the work that they picked as kind of a key inspiration. And talking about the structure of this movie, I see a lot of Let's Scare Jessica to Death in The Small Hours, in the way that, like I said when we first started talking, there's an element early on of, okay, we are a group of friends just trying to solve a problem that is a very clear and obvious problem to us, a very realistic problem. Our friend is dead. We don't know who killed her. We think maybe we might have a chance at getting some evidence. Let's go do that. And then weird stuff starts to happen, but you kind of wonder how much of it is them just being paranoid and how much of it is real. Like, there are all these sort of local legends about Mr. Fields, the guy who owns this house, and Russian mob and all this other stuff. And you kind of go, well, maybe something supernatural is happening, or maybe they're just freaking out a little bit because they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. And then in the last, this book is broken into three sections. In that last section, which I think, if I remember correctly, is about 40 or so pages, you just let the shit go. Like, it is just like, oh, you want vampires, buddy. Let's go. All of it at once. And it's so fun to read, especially after you have spent the previous 100 pages building up that tension and ambiguity. Do you think that is a sort of structural thing that you borrowed from Let's Scare Jessica to Death?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure that things like that imprint themselves in my head. But it's, I wasn't consciously thinking about it. And here's the thing you got to keep in mind. There's probably not a day in my life that has not gone by to where I didn't get reminded of something from Let's Scare Jessica to Death.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's every scene in that movie is varied in location, setting, how it's done, lighting, everything like that. And because of that, outdoor scenes, indoor scenes, at the lake, in the city, driving in a car, the hearse for a car, I thought that was great. And they used that in the promo too. They would drive. At the world premiere, they had a hearse.
That's amazing.
Cash into the I guess the William Castle effect.
Absolutely, yes.
Chocorama, whatever, the electric seats and all that. But I think of this film like so much, and I've probably seen it about 15 times. And here's the thing too. I finally broke down a couple weeks ago and bought the Blu-ray because I've been watching it off of DVD. And the Blu-ray is really, really nice. it's cleaned up and it's very clear. But it's also a $250,000 movie and made in early 1970s, and so it does have that grainy look. But it looked great. So I think about it constantly, and I think that there's no doubt that it imprinted in there. The other driving force of that is, especially like when you get into the shed in the story, and I'm trying not to spoil my own book, but the shed is the titty twister from Dusk Till Dawn.
Sure, yeah.
And so I wanted to do that scene, but I wanted to make it organic within the story. So it's like I've got to shift gears here. I've done the mystery enough. I've kind of set up a couple of supernatural things that could be going on. The guardian angel that was something that when the book was originally subbed, it did not have those. There were some parts in there it did not have, and it was rejected. But it was also suggested that I take some elements and expand them if I wanted to. If not, I was welcome to sub wherever I wanted to.
Yes. And
initially, when you create your baby and you send it out, and you get that sting, that little rejection. Oh, it hurts. It hurts, but you learn from it and you move on. But my initial thing is, I ain't changing a damn thing. No, I'll just send it out somewhere else, But what they said kept going in my head, and I'm finally like, okay, well, what if? And I created a what if that followed my rules of what I thought was going to go on, and said, okay, I'll resub it, and then it got accepted. So, and I think they wanted more of a novel, and originally it was a novella, and so. Some of the stuff that's in the Small Hours was it's like a year apart that I had to rebuild the story. But I knew I had to switch gears, and I was damn determined I was going to do that, because once you get into a murder mystery and you've got vampires, you've got to switch gears somehow. Yeah. You've got to throw it in reverse, take a right turn that no one expects. And I had so much mystery and sleuthing involved. I'm like, man, I've got to switch gears. Yeah. And so I hope it doesn't feel abrupt. I hope it's organic, and because that was my goal.
Well, I think, and again, we're talking around this because we don't want to spoil exactly what happens in this book for people who haven't read it. It's only been out for 8 days, as we're talking. So, what's amazing about it, what I thought was really fun, was the way you build all of these elements together. I thought I knew where the turn was coming. I was very like, okay, I see, we got this, and all the characters are coming together, and now it's going to be this. And when the turn happened, it was not the turn I was expecting. And I think that you buy yourself some goodwill. Like I love when a novel tells you, like, I mean, you have a vampire lady right there on the cover. You're not hiding that you wrote a vampire novel. And I love reading something and going, okay, so this is supposed to be a vampire novel. Obviously, we're going to spend some time getting to know characters. We're going to understand the situation. The narrative's going to move forward. Where are the vampires? Where are they hiding? Where can I find them? Or, the ghosts or the demons, or as the case may be with each book. And so I'm sitting there as someone who reviews books and who writes my own fiction and who thinks about these things constantly. I'm looking at all the ingredients on the board going like, okay, he's going to combine this with this, and it's going to be this. And then you did not do that. You absolutely subverted my expectations. And so not only do I not think it feels abrupt, I think that it is an especially clever way to finally deploy all those elements into something that I really didn't see coming. So it was a lot of fun to read.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That makes me feel really good because when you're writing and you come up with these ideas and you try to execute them on the page, sometimes it's not as easy as it seems. And fortunately, I think that only thing that really kept me going because I'm one of those people that if you start thinking about a story, if you think about it too much, you'll think your way out of it,
Yeah.
especially if you're creative, and you'll go, ah, it's not going to work anyway. I'm not going to do that. And I had a lot of momentum going. So I was unstoppable at that point. And I was like, and I was so geared up to write that scene. Once I concocted it in my mind, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And to me, it's like, it was the funnest part of doing that scene. Because it's like, hey, I get to get bloody, I get to get horny, I get to get all the things that make vampires, and gory, and it's just I put it all together, and I'm glad it worked because, like I said, it's like if you start thinking, if you think about the Evil Dead, it doesn't work. You
A
just have
lot
to
of
go in
yeah,
there.
it
It does. It's like this on paper. It's like this doesn't work at all.
it's about the experiential, you know, and some of that has to do with character identification. And I very much identified with these four young people getting into trouble. And so that was a good entry point, and I'm able to follow those people. I want to follow those people. And so many horror stories are like that where like, yeah, okay, if you think about this a little too hard, it's going to start to come apart in your hands. But the idea is you want to be in the seat those characters are in. And then it becomes experiential, and then it becomes something that you buy on an emotional level, and it works. So yeah, I think you pulled it off, and I think that everybody should go pick up a copy of The Small Hours from Ghoulish Books. Support Bob, support a great small press, our friends over at Ghoulish Books. Bob, before we let you go, will you let everyone know where they can find you online?
Yes, I am at Blue Sky at bobpastorella.com. I got my domain as I guess a form of verification there. So, and you can also find me at my blog at bobpastorella.com. I am on Patreon, but right now it's kind of on a hiatus. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with it. And I am on Threads at Bob Pastorella. So, and on Instagram, and I still don't know how to use Instagram. So,
you and me both. You and me both. I have like a couple days a month where I feel confident about Instagram, but beyond that, not really. And of course, This Is Horror.
yes.
Everyone knows that This Is Horror podcast with Bob and Michael, and you can catch that every week. Be sure to subscribe. It's a great show. Our guest has been Bob Pastorella. Bob, thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Thank you for having me. It was great to be on.
Thanks once again to Bob Pastorella for being on the show. It was great to catch up with Bob and talk to him about his work. The Small Hours is available right now from Ghoulish Books. You should pick it up. It's a lot of fun. You can read it in one sitting. Great hybrid crime vampire story. Had a blast reading that book. So go get that book. And be sure to go follow Bob and, of course, This Is Horror on all of the social platforms to keep track of everything they have going on. And if you want to keep track of everything we have going on, the best way to do that is to follow us on Blue Sky. We are at scareshapedus.bsky.social over there. That is where you will find links to every episode the day they go up. You will also find new guest announcements. You will find giveaways whenever we do giveaways. All kinds of good stuff over there on the Scares That Shaped Us Blue Sky account. We are also on Facebook. We're the Scares That Shaped Us over there. We are also the Scares That Shaped Us on YouTube. If you prefer to listen to your podcast that way, head over there, like, subscribe. We appreciate the support. If you like the show, please consider telling your friends, letting everybody know. And of course, if you really like the show, the best way to support us is to go to the podcasting app of your choice and leave us a 5-star review. That will help us to get featured, which will help bring in more listeners, which will help us to keep doing all the cool stuff that we are doing. And like I said before, we have a newsletter. It is a hybrid newsletter between my horror writing work and the podcast. It is at MatthewJacksonWrites.com. That is where you will find daily essays all through the month of October about John Carpenter's Halloween, book reviews, movie reviews, of course, every episode of the podcast. Lots of other stuff coming in the future, including possibly some writing from some special guests. So if you want to keep track of everything going on over there, MatthewJacksonWrites.com, put in your email address, sign up. You will get it all straight to your inbox. Again, we do have paid tiers at $1 a month and $5 a month. I would very much appreciate any financial support you're able to lend us, but you absolutely don't have to do that. You will get lots of free content in your inbox just by putting in your email address. We appreciate you reading because I'm having a lot of fun writing that stuff. That is it for us this week. We will be back next week with a brand new episode. Our guest will be Ali Malinenko. We are going to talk to Ali about her amazing new novel, Broken Dolls. And we're going to talk about one of the all-time classic, most read horror short stories ever, The Telltale Heart. It's a really fun discussion that digs into a lot of our early childhood exposure to horror stories and what that did to us and how that made us into the people we are today, both Ali and I, but mostly Ali because she's the guest. That will drop Wednesday, October 22nd at noon Central. Hope you will tune in for that. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, subscribe to the show, and then you won't have to remember to tune in because you'll just have it right there. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, have a great Halloween season. I'm Matthew Jackson, and this is The Scares That Shaped Us.